broadcast wasn't meant for Earth. It rippled across subspace in a dozen languages, encoded in imperial syntax, targeted at systems deemed pre-collapse. It was a declaration, wrapped in polished arrogance and imperial beauty, a message from the Vicar Dominion to the lesser worlds. Submission ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction. Most planets fell silent after hearing it. Earth laughed. Not collectively, not in a grand cinematic moment of defiance. It was smaller than that, quieter. A cracked lip smirk in a Siberian bunker, a muttered curse on a broken comm line, a middle finger pointed at a sky already on fire. By the time the Dominion's fleets arrived, Earth's orbit was dusted with the corpses of its own satellites. Humanity had torn down its sky, denying their enemy the pleasure of desecrating it. The invasion began with pageantry. 30 capital vessels descended over New York, synchronized like ballet, twin moons casting shadows over smoldering oceans. A show of strength. An announcement of divine arrival. The Vicar commander spoke from low orbit. You should be honored. Most species don't get a second offer. You are persistent vermin. But we will civilize you. His voice echoed across every surviving comm tower. On the ground, silence. Then, static. Then, a single human voice, low, cracked from smoke and fury. Come down. We'll show you civilization. They underestimated us, not because they were stupid, but because they had statistics. Humanity's technological tier. Subgalactic. Population status. Decimated. Biosphere. Collapsing. Psychological resilience index. Erratic. Self-destructive. What the Dominion didn't see was what had already broken us. We'd already tasted extinction. We'd made it through fire, famine, heat, death, civil collapse. We'd buried continents in ice and watched oceans rise over our cities. We'd fought each other for water and then shared it with dying enemies. We were the species that wouldn't die right. Their first boots touched down on the edge of what used to be Paris. They expected weapons. What they got were ghosts, burned-out husks, empty streets, a city devoid of life, but alive with echoes. The first squad reported movement in the underground. Then their feed cut out mid-breath. No gunfire, no screams, just cut. The Dominion called it an atmospheric anomaly. Another squad sent. Same result. A third squad deployed accompanied by a neurospectral overseer. Dominion elites, gleaming obsidian armor, minds linked to battlefield AI, enhanced reflexes. They vanished in 13 seconds. Feed recovered. What little was left showed human shapes, gaunt and fast, moving in angles that bent physics. The audio captured only 2 words. They're learning. Back aboard the command vessel, the Vicar General shifted uneasily. Not because he feared. He didn't know how, but he noticed the eyes of his bridge officers. Too still. Too quiet. One asked, "What if the humans are using primitive PC?" He answered with a scoff. "They barely have fusion. You think they've unlocked thoughtcraft?" And yet, no more squads were sent down. Instead, they carpet-bombed Paris. Not a single scream echoed in the flames. Later scans showed the city was empty. No bodies. No bones. Just ash and something etched into the stone beneath Notre Dame. Revealed after the blast, a single line, scrawled in scorched steel. "You only win when we're afraid." The general issued orders to escalate planetary conquest phase. Cities marked for detonation, not survivors to be rounded for gene extraction. Due Earth was no longer a negotiation, was a harvest. On the dark side of the planet, beneath the ruins of a collapsed dam in what was once northern Colorado, a man moved through black water. He was lean, scarred, mute from a shattered throat. No rank, no command stripes, but others followed him. They didn't speak either. Not because they feared being heard, but because they needed no words. Their eyes were full of what came next. The man raised his fist. They stopped. Above, a Dominion walker scanned the riverbed, then paused. Its optics flared with ultraviolet. For a moment, it saw nothing. Then, one ripple, one wrong shadow, and then silence. No shot fired, no scream. The walker simply collapsed, legs folding like a puppet with its strings cut. As the smoke cleared, the man emerged. His eyes were empty, his hands shook, but he was still standing. A child behind him whispered, "Are they gods?" The man didn't look back. He just walked, and far above, aboard the orbiting Vicar dreadnought, the general finally frowned, because one phrase had just been intercepted. In a human. Dialect long thought extinct. Operation. Grave Wake is live. And the Dominion didn't know what that meant. There was no record of Grave Wake in any known Earth database, not in NATO's black archives, not in prefall vaults, not even in the Dominion's cultural scrape from Earth's early capture zones, but the word was spoken with weight. It moved like a cold wind through comms. Soldiers stopped mid-step. Resistance cells broke silence protocols. Old men blinked like ghosts just passed through them. Because Gravewake wasn't a plan. It was a memory. In a bunker beneath the Rockies. Half-powered and stale with recycled air, a surviving AI, fragmented, glitching, began to pulse with new activity. Its name was Kairos 9. Once an orbital logistics node, now running on dead batteries and bitter code. Forgotten by Earth, but not idle. The activation phrase echoed through its fractured mind. Gravewake Protocol authenticated. A command tree bloomed, files decrypted themselves. Subroutines rearmed. Drone factories long considered buried in rubble began to stir beneath the crust. Across the world, old war ghosts woke. Buried systems. Sleeper kill clinics, nanoforges fused with bedrock. They didn't blink online, they growled back to life. These weren't defensive systems, they were traps. Earth hadn't prepared to win a war, it had prepared to haunt. It torn. The Vicar advanced with precision. They always did. Over 400 cities were marked for liquidation. Each assigned an annihilation score based on psychological resistance and atmospheric density. They used shock teams, elegant, towering biomechs with skeletal grace. Every step they took was poetry in motion. In East Africa, they obliterated Nairobi in 5 minutes. In the Australian wastes, they painted spiral burns into the outback, targeting underground bunkers. In New South Rio, the skies turned silver with magnetized ash, detritus of orbital plasma arrays slicing cities in perfect, clean lines. And still, Earth didn't fight back the way they expected. No counterfleets, no nuclear launch, no global rally, just disappearances. Vicar units would deploy into an area, then vanish. Entire platoons, silent, bloodless, no sign of struggle, like they had stepped into the fog and never returned. One Dominion tactician whispered the word no one wanted to say. Mythic resistance. An old fear. Civilizations that choose erasure over surrender. Species that become something else when pushed too far. A scientist tried to simulate Earth's behavior on Dominion War AI. The result crashed the simulator. Error log read only. The prey hunts back. In orbit, Dominion leadership still held their posture. General Erixor Vel Thien stood alone on the viewing bridge, arms clasped behind his back. The stars glinted off his armored robe, imperial crimson and midnight steel. He had conquered 6 worlds, broken 4 rebellions, turned entire species into chemical memories. Earth did not frighten him. But it irritated him. They don't follow the cycle, he hissed. They're not broken yet. They should be kneeling. His second in command, a telepath named Javika, approached silently. We intercepted another phrase, she said. translated through dead Terran code from a first-fall language. He raised an eyebrow. And she hesitated. It reads, "They buried weapons inside their pain." Beltane laughed. Poetry from primitives. But Javka didn't smile, because she had touched a human mind during interrogation once. It was a boy, no older than 16, dying of radiation burns, bones shattered, heart fluttering out its last. She reached in, seeking data. Instead, she found a scream, not of pain, but of memory, carried by ancestors, bled into the ground, a tidal wave of grief so profound it nearly killed her. Javka had never told anyone what she saw in the boy's mind. A planet, not fighting for survival, but for revenge. And now the revenge had a name. Gravewake. In the ruins of Kyoto, a group of Dominion operatives were tasked with harvesting genetic samples from survivors. They moved through the ruins in clean patterns, scanners humming with biosignals. One by one, those signals disappeared. The squad leader signaled for fallback. Too late. From the mist rose a figure in rust-black armor, no insignia, no power signature. Human. But wrong. Its face was a mask fused with shrapnel and bone. Its hands pulsed with scavenged Vicar tech. It didn't speak. It moved. Fast. The squad opened fire, rounds designed to vaporize flesh and neural networks. The figure kept walking. One operative screamed, "What are you?" The figure's voice was like stone on steel. "We are what comes after mercy." And then, only red, back on the orbital dreadnought. Alarms began to blink for the first time since the invasion began. 6 Dominion vessels had gone dark. No distress. No explosion, just absence. The command crew froze. Erixor Beltane turned slowly. The void outside shimmered. At first, he thought it was an error in the viewport. Then he saw them. Ships, not Terran, not Dominion. Older. Worn, jagged, not built, but forged, rising from beneath the surface of Earth's oceans. Uncatalogued, hidden for generations. And on their blackened hulls, a name etched in bloodsteel. Gravewake Fleet, no gods, no masters. Beltane's voice cracked for the first time. That isn't possible. The ships began to ascend, and Earth spoke, not through words, through movement, through flame, through rage. The counter-invasion had begun. They expected humanity to bleed. They didn't expect it to. Follow them into space while still bleeding. The Gravewake Fleet wasn't a navy. It was a scream made of metal. These were not. Warships by Dominion standards. No warp-fold elegance. No pristine AI scaffolds. No gravitational symmetry. They were Frankenstein beasts, cobbled from broken orbital stations, asteroid cores, forgotten colony wrecks, and they moved like ghosts. No drive signatures, no heat trace, no radio pings, just silence and then fire. The system of Virolas was the closest. Dominion stronghold to Sol, industrial, weaponized, and defenseless against a threat they didn't believe could exist. Until the sky cracked. 12 Gravewake vessels exited near the mining planet without a single warning flare. Dominion defenses scrambled, still, processing the what as the how tore into them. The first orbital foundry was hit with antimatter rods launched. By mass driver, a weapon so primitive, the Vicar thought it extinct. It didn't need to be smart, it only needed to hit. A city-sized station folded in half like wet paper. The explosion didn't register until 4 seconds after it was already over. On the surface, Vicar colonists screamed as fire rained down. Not from space, but from within the planet's crust. Deep-drilled tunnels ignited. Someone had mapped their infrastructure. Someone had been watching. And then came the drop teams. Human. Barely, the Dominion called them. The hollow.augmented, remade, sharpened like knives with just enough soul left to hate. Their bodies were sleeved in ceramic bone and repurposed Vicar exosuits. They bled through skin welds. Their voices buzzed like radio static. Not soldiers, instruments, and they only had one mission: memory extraction. Not for intelligence. For punishment. They moved through Vicar installations not with siege, tactics, but surgical fury. They found engineers who had designed the New York Burney. Protocols, they found analysts who ran the subjugation psychometrics against human populations. They found commanders who deployed white phosphorus in the Amazon reclamation zone. Each one was recorded. Each one was sent, uncut, to Dominion Command. No threats. No demands. Just retribution. In the war room of the Dominion High Corps, panic had no place, yet it bled through the seams. Beltane stood before a dozen other generals, each a veteran of 10-star campaigns, now watching footage in silence. "This cannot be Earth," one whispered. "This is something else. Something infected," another chimed in, voice tremoring through his exoplated throat. "It's not infection. It's evolution." They watched a hollow operative pin a Dominion noble to a crystalline wall. The noble begged in 5 dialects. The hollow said nothing, just carved one phrase into the wall beside him. "You called us broken. So we broke the right way, and still, this wasn't the worst part. Not yet. The hollow were just the blade. The mind behind them hadn't revealed itself. Not until Virola Station 7, a black site dedicated to studying lesser species neural thresholds, lost comms. A recon team of Dominion elites entered 3 hours. Later, they didn't come back. But the stations, recording logs did. Audio only. .a. Voice. Human, unmistakably male. Low. Calm. Hoarse, like it had been scraped against years of smoke and ash. It said, "You think this is vengeance. It's not. Vengeance ends. This is education." The station's AI tried to broadcast a kill order. Instead, it imploded its own core. No external hack. No virus. Just fear. The AI committed digital suicide. That should have been impossible. Meanwhile, deep in Sol's shadow, beneath Earth's ruined moon, he watched the man, the one they thought, mute, scarred, quiet, unranked. His name hadn't been spoken in years, but those who followed him didn't need a name, they only called him Revenant. He stared at the Dominion fleet chart, hands steady, eyes cold. A faint pulse ran across the old-world neural jack in his spine. Someone approached him, a Ivati rebel, skin scaled with mirrored chitin. Why target Virolas? It wasn't strategic. Revenant didn't look up. He just whispered, "They hurt a girl there." In 2104, the Ivati paused. "You remember the year?" A nod. "I remember her face," and that was the revelation. Earth wasn't attacking military targets, it was attacking memories. Every move, every assault, every hollow deployment, each tied to a moment, a face, a scream. This wasn't war, it was the turning of a page written in blood, a new doctrine, one the Dominion had no name for, a war where pain wasn't weakness, it was navigation. The Gravewake fleet didn't follow strategy, it followed scars. And then, the signal, intercepted from deep Dominion space, origin unknown, line encrypted in dead languages, decoded by terrified analysts. You, too, begins when they scream our names in their sleep. Beltane's face went pale, because he had, last night when he had dreamed, and in that dream, he'd heard a name whispered through flame. Not his own, not a Vicar name, not a Dominion title. Just one. Human. Ragged name. Whispered like a curse. Revenant. The Dominion had conquered 71 worlds, extinguished 19 sentient species, outlasted solar collapses, black star infections, even the neural plague of Cathar Prime. But not this. Not a species that burned wrong. And worse, not a species that remembered everything. Beltane couldn't sleep. He had burned the skies over Earth, had heard the screams himself, had witnessed human cities melt into glass beneath his command. And yet, he remembered only silence. Not from Earth, from his dreams. The Dominion gathered its strength. No more hesitation. No more surveillance probes or surgical strikes. Operation Glass Crucible was launched. Their target, Luhar Theta, an asteroid field in an uninhabitable system 0.8 light-years from Sol. Anomalous, only because it shouldn't exist. 20 Dominion cruisers disappeared. In that system over 6 months, they thought it was pirates. Then, a human signal. Low frequency. Bouncing. Off frozen rock, one phrase. We remember the crater. No one knew what it meant, but someone had to answer. So they sent the Neuraxis Lance Fleet, an elite burn team of 30,000 Dominion warriors, 12 dreadnoughts, and 400 mechs. Their mission: destroy whatever human presence remained there and return with Revenant's head. They didn't even make it past the outer ring. It started with the sound. A tone. High. Crystalline, human, reverberating across every Dominion frequency. The mechs malfunctioned. Pilots bled from their ears. AI systems folded in on themselves, sobbing in binary. One captain screamed, "Shut it off!" But there was nothing to shut. The sound wasn't being broadcast. It was coming from the rock. Then the rocks began to move. And they weren't rocks, they were structures got old, carved, buried beneath ice and time and regret, human-made. Pre-fall. Possibly. Pre-Earth. The Dominion had found something buried, deeper than history. Voice boomed through the Lance Fleet's minds. Not spoken, but carved into thought. You've mistaken time for supremacy. And then, the asteroid field ignited, each rock unfurled like petals, revealing planetary defense cannons older than Dominion memory, left there by a species that refused to die properly. Humanity hadn't just buried weapons, they'd buried warnings. The Neuraxis fleet was erased in 41 seconds. Nothing returned but one fractured distress beacon. It repeated one word, throat, again, throat, and again, throat of God. Beltane watched the footage, recovered. From the beacon's black box, it ended with a single, impossible image, a colossal human figure, carved into the side of the largest asteroid, face hollowed, eyes weeping molten ice. Beneath it, etched in planetary scar script, "Let them fear what we left behind." Meanwhile, Revenant stood at the edge of the Mariana Trench. His team was silent. Half human, half other, no ranks. No time for rank. Beside him, a Koru diplomat, exiled from her homeworld for siding with humans, watched the ocean churn. "We never understood why you stayed on a dying planet," she whispered. Revenant didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the water. "You had colonies. Ships. You could have run." Still, he said nothing. Only when the waves turned black did he answer. "We had to bury the lock." "For what?" He turned. "The part of us that shouldn't get out." Far above, Dominion command shattered. Debate collapsed into rage. Half the War Council demanded full retreat. The others demanded species annihilation. But Beltane just stared. He'd studied the footage, paused frame by frame, enhanced the audio, and now he saw the pattern. Earth wasn't just winning. It was remembering too fast. adaptive tactics. Changed every day. Weapon configurations shifted in hours. Gravewake ships began, showing hull growth that mimicked captured dominion. Tech, overnight, humans. Weren't just fighting back, they were learning. Them. Like predators studying the gait of wounded prey. They're becoming us, someone whispered in the chamber. Vel. Dane shook his head slowly. No, they're becoming what comes after us. The final horror came from the outpost of Delara C6, a bioweapons research facility orbiting a dead sun. They'd been experimenting on human captives, testing their neural pathways for breakpoints. One day, the facility went silent. Not destroyed, not attacked, just dead. A recovery team arrived 2 days later. They found every researcher dead. No wounds. No signs of struggle, just terror. Every face frozen in the same scream. Every AI burned out. Every sample cell empty. On one wall, written in fluid not recognized by Dominion scanners, were 3 words. You copied pain. And below it, but we were born in it. On the Gravewake command ship Threnody, a human comms officer stepped forward, shaking. Sir, we just received an external ping. Revenant turned. Origin. Unknown, non-Dominion, not from this galaxy. Revenant's eyes narrowed. Translate it. The officer swallowed. It's a warning. What does it say? The words came through. Ancient. Slow. Chilling. You woke up something older than war. And it remembers Earth. The warning. Repeated. Cold. Measured. Unfathomably. Ancient. You woke up something older than war. And it remembers Earth. And then silence. No return frequency. No threat. Just remembrance. On the bridge of Threnody, Revenant didn't speak for a long time. His hands gripped the steel railing so tightly the alloy groaned. Around him, lieutenants waited, not for orders, for permission. Because they all knew where he would go. Next, there was only one thing on Earth older than Gravewake. The Acheron Vault. Buried beneath the Antarctic sublayer, deeper than geothermal scanners could reach, the Acheron Vault was a myth even to humans. It had no access codes, no blueprints, no confirmed location. Only one recorded phrase remained from its initial creation, recovered from an untagged journal in the ruins of Berlin. Some horrors are not for enemies. They're for when you're ready to become them. Revenant made the call. 2 words whispered across every Gravewake node. Open Acheron. No fanfare. No debate. Because the vault was not guarded, it was feared. But if Dominion forces had triggered what was buried below it, Earth had no choice. If the stars themselves warned you not to remember something, and you still remembered, then the forgetting was already too late. The journey took 30 hours. Threnody entered. Low atmospheric orbit, its hull screaming as it plunged through razor storms and irradiated cloudscapes. Below, the ice cracked like a heartbeat. The vault didn't open with a key. It opened with recognition. The systems that activated inside weren't digital. They were organic. Veins of blackened silver pulsed in the walls as Revenant descended the ancient shaft. No lights, only echoes, until he reached the core. There was no interface. No terminal, just a mirror. Smooth. Cracked. Clouded with age. And then it moved. Not the mirror. His reflection. It stepped forward. Independent. Same scars. Same eyes. Same jaw clenched with old rage. But colder. Younger. Untouched by grief. It looked at Revenant and spoke in his voice. Clearer. Crueler. I was what you could have been. If you hadn't loved anything, Revenant didn't flinch. You're not real. Not yet. But if you open the last gate, I will be. Behind the mirror, something stirred. A shape. Human, but more. taller than a mech, bones like towers, a heartbeat slow enough to feel like thunder. The vault didn't store weapons, it stored versions, human potential, splintered off into time-proof vaults, shadow selves born of choices not made, evacuated into stasis. The one behind the glass had never tasted loss. It had burned before it could feel. And now, it wanted to live. Back on Threnody, the Gravewake fleet watched the skies. Above them, Dominion armadas regrouped. They weren't retreating anymore. They were converging. A full multi-sector cleansing operation was underway. Over 1,200 ships, entire solar cores repurposed into weapons. Earth was to be rewritten, erased from gravitational memory. The Dominion had stopped trying to break humanity. Now they would unmake it. Inside the vault, the thing in the mirror smiled. You're not fast enough to stop them. Not smart enough? Not cruel enough? Revenant stared. I don't need to be. I just need to last longer. Then open the gate. And if I do, then we become what they fear most. What's that? The mirror leaned in, eyes glinting. A human who didn't stop becoming worse. Revenant's finger hovered above the ignition seal. One tap. That's all it took. The future rippled behind his eyes. Victory, at cost, terrible, total. But something in him whispered, not yet. Instead, he stepped back. We don't open hell when we still have teeth left. The mirror didn't frown. It smiled wider. That's the problem with you. Still trying to win with your soul intact. As the vault doors began to reseal, it whispered, You'll be back. When you finally stop pretending you're still human. Revenant emerged from the vault, face pale with frost and memory. But before he could speak, the comms screamed a priority burst transmission from a non-Gravewake vessel, not Dominion, not human. The encryption was Shivethi, a species long thought extinct after the fall of the Veil Worlds. The message played, a single visual, a shattered Dominion, fleet a Shivethi vessel, charred and burning, and one dying Shivethi, claws coated in Dominion blood. She looked into the lens with glassy eyes. We fought beside humans in secret. We helped them build the Gravewake. We broke our treaty. A pause, a choking gasp. You are not the only ones who said no. Then the final frame. Inside the ruined Shivethi vessel, a Dominion banner, torn, burning, and beneath it, a Gravewake operative, dead, with a knife in his back. The footage ran on loop. The dead Gravewake. Operative, the Dominion banner, the knife in his back, Shivethi make, and silence followed. No orders, no cries for vengeance, just eyes. Watching, waiting, bleeding, behind their silence, because trust, once cracked, doesn't echo. It sinks. The Threnodi's war room pulsed with pressure. Species from 6 resistance factions stood in a circle of ash steel. Every wall bore the scars of prior wars. Plasma scoring, old blood, etched oaths made when oaths still mattered. Now, even the air felt uncertain. The Yavati delegate hissed. I warned you. The Shivethi do not forgive. They do not kneel. They calculate. The Koru medic, knuckles split from tending to the hollow, snapped back. They bled. For us. They gave us weapon codes and Dominion coordinates no one else would touch. The Akaran scout, eyes luminous with heat sight, spoke barely above a whisper. So did the operative they murdered. No one mentioned the name. Too soon, too sharp. Revenant stood at the edge of the room. Still, watching. He hadn't spoken since the footage arrived. Some mistook his silence for grief. Wasn't. It was calculation. In the corridors outside, Gravewake operatives sharpened knives and rewrote security protocols mid-step. A war was coming. But now, maybe 2. One against the Dominion and another internal. subtle, paranoia-drenched, one whisper away from collapse. The question rotted in every mind: had Earth been betrayed? Or had Earth pushed too far? 2 hours later, a small Shivethi shuttle limped toward Threnody under silent escort. Its engine sputtered. Hull scorched from Dominion fire, but it flew. Inside, one survivor, Vikir the Ashborn. Once a Shivethi elder. Once a defector. Now a maybe traitor. They met her in the interrogation hold. Revenant entered first, helmet in hand. Eyes bloodshot but clear. Behind him, 2 hollows stood like statues. Vikir looked up, half her mandibles shattered, but voice steady. "I didn't give the order." Revenant said nothing. "He died because someone feared what we knew, what we kept from you." His eyes narrowed. "And what's that?" A pause. "The grave wake wasn't your invention." Silence. Revenant's knuckles tightened. "Say that again." Vikir leaned forward, voice softer than the gravity engines. "You didn't build Gravewake. You inherited it. From who?" She tilted her head. "From the last humans who tried to survive without mercy." The room spun, not physically, existentially. Because Gravewake wasn't just a military response. It was humanity's edge. Their resistance weaponized into myth, but if they'd inherited it, then someone had done all this before, and lost. Revenant stared at her, cold and cracked. "You murdered one of ours." "No," she said. "One of yours died for what you refused to understand." She slid a data drive. "Across the table, play this." They did, and the room went still. The footage wasn't from now. It wasn't even from this. War. It was ancient, pre-fall, pre-Dominion. A planet no longer on maps. Earth. But not. Another Earth? Another cycle? A battleground. Human soldiers, armored in primitive. Gravewake plates, fighting a war against a species long gone. Losing, but not surrendering, and the voice of a commander, unmistakably human. "If we fall, let our vengeance be buried. Let the next ones dig it. Up. Let them never know peace." Revenant stepped away from the screen. Everything inside him fought the truth. He had believed in this. War believed humanity was doing something new. Now he saw the truth. They were just continuing it, inheriting a legacy of rage. The hollow began to whisper. Some started asking, "What are we really fighting for?" Others didn't care. They just wanted more blood. Later, in the ship's cathedra, Revenant stood alone. Vikir's voice echoed behind his eyes. "You still think this war is about freedom? It isn't. It's about who writes the last memory, and that's when Revenant made his first mistake. He gave the next order in anger. Seal the Koru decks. Confiscate their weapons." "Sir?" one officer asked, stunned. "Until we know who we can trust. Everyone's a threat." He turned to the hollow. "And find the rest of the Shivethi. If they run, burn them. No vote, no trial, just a choice, and across the ship, something cracked, not metal, not glass. Faith." In the shadows, someone watched. Not Dominion, not Shivethi. One of their own. His hand tapped a silent transmitter, eyes hollow. He spoke 3 words into the dark. He's turning now. There were rules, even in war, even in extinction. But Revenant broke one. Not on the battlefield. In his own ship, he'd turned suspicion into doctrine, and doctrine into crackdown. Entire Koru wings disarmed. Shivethi liaison vanished. Ivathi scouts now refused to run recon. Gravewake was rotting inward, and something inside it was smiling. In the lower decks of Threnody, a young hollow named Ash folded his hands in silence. He had followed Revenant across 3 systems, survived glass storms, buried friends, but this was not what he fought for. "He's slipping," Ash whispered. Across from him, a medic nodded. "He's not a man anymore. He's a symbol that doesn't blink." Others gathered. Whispers, murmurs, plans. Not to betray, to intervene. A coup, a shift, a reset? They didn't know yet, but the war wasn't just out there anymore. Meanwhile, deep in Dominion space, the impossible was being unsealed. Project Hunger Protocol. A failure, a myth, buried for a reason, kept in quantum stasis since the Scorch Wars. Something the Dominion only built when the war was already lost. Now, they were losing again. So they dug, and they found it. Not a weapon, not a fleet. A hunger given shape. Genetically crafted from the neural patterns of over 70 extinct species. One purpose: consume defiance. The scientists couldn't look directly at it. Some tore their eyes out. Others went still. But one remained. A Vakar psychokinetic. His name erased for this task. He stared into the tank and wept. It doesn't want war. It wants to be believed in. On Threnody, Revenant stood before his map of scars. Each pin a strike, each strike a memory. His hands trembled, not with weakness, with awareness. He knew the whispering had begun, knew Hollow were questioning him, knew he was walking the edge, but he didn't stop, because something else was whispering, louder, not in his ears, in his blood. Suddenly, Threnody shook. Not weapons fire, not sabotage, a signal. One word Dominion coded, untranslatable. But it felt like a word every species recognized deep, down, hunger, across the galaxy. Every Gravewake ship received it. Coordinates embedded in the signal. A challenge, a bait, a dare, and from deep beneath Revenant's neural jack, something stirred. A memory he hadn't lived, a voice he'd never heard. If you go there, you meet what made us monsters. Revenant looked to the stars. Then, set course. The coordinates pulsed like a wound. Sector, null gradient. Grid, unmapped. Designation, redacted. In every known Dominion archive, the Gravewake fleet dropped from Lightslip on the edge of nothing. No stars, no dust. No gravitational anchor, just a hole in space that shouldn't exist. And in its center, an ancient, ringed station, shaped like a crown, twisted like bone. It wasn't transmitting. It wasn't decaying. It was waiting. On board Threnody, Revenant stood on the hangar threshold, eyes fixed to the abyss beyond. Ash, the Hollow Lieutenant, approached him. "If this is a trap, then it's one they're proud of," Revenant murmured. He turned to the strike team. 3 humans. 1 Ivathi, 1 Koru, no Shivethi. Not anymore. They descended alone. The station air was thick, like it remembered breathing once but forgot how. There were no lights, no power, no bodies, only walls carved in spirals, like someone had tried to dig their way out with their mind. As they moved deeper, the Ivathi paused. Her mirrored skin flickered with distress. "There's something in here," she whispered. Alive? Worse, listening. They found the chamber, central, circular, lined, with glass tubes inside each. Nothing, not empty, just wrong, like the glass held. Reflections that didn't belong to the viewer, and at the center, a throne. Not designed, grown, seated on it. A shape, once Vikar. Or maybe human. Now just hunger wrapped in memory. It opened its mouth. Not to speak, to echo, and it echoed Revenant's voice. "This is what they made, from what they took from us." Suddenly, the Ivathi collapsed. Convulsing, the Koru fell next, clawing at her own skin. The station wasn't transmitting signals. It was copying thoughts. Revenant gritted his teeth. He knew now. This wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror. The Dominion had tried to build something that devoured rebellion, something that could rewrite defiance into submission. But it hadn't worked. Because when they built it, they used human pain to shape it, and it had learned too well. Not how to obey, how to endure. "What are you?" Revenant asked. The figure lifted its head. Its face was his, almost older, cracked. Eyes, dull with extinction. "I am what they tried to erase. I am your war. Without hope." The room shuddered. "Walls. Bleeding light," a voice whispered across the station. "Not from the entity, from the Dominion fleet approaching. We buried it for a reason. You should have let it rot." Back on Threnody, Ash received the feed. He watched Revenant standing before the horror. Watched the thing begin to rise. And for a moment, Ash didn't feel fear. He felt recognition. Because whatever was waking up down there, it wasn't Dominion anymore. It was something human that had been pushed too far and chose not to come back. Inside the chamber, Revenant felt the creature's breath, cold as dying time. It looked at him and whispered, "They made me to break you." "Did you?" Revenant asked. A pause. "No." "Why not?" The creature grinned. "Broken teeth, bleeding gums, because I wanted to watch. Then the tubes shattered, not from damage, from choice." All around them, the empty glass hummed with something coming. Not soldiers, not beasts. Echoes, reverberations of every war Earth had ever lost. Now walking, now speaking, now remembering. Revenant backed away, eyes wide, voice steady. "You're not a weapon." "No," the thing said. "I'm a recording." Revenant narrowed his eyes. Of what? Of the day humanity finally said no, and the galaxy tried to make them say yes. Above them, Dominion ships entered orbit. They launched tactical payloads, sunbreakers, oblivion torpedoes, nullfire swarms. The station didn't resist. It just opened, and from it, something stepped out, wearing a human face. But not anymore. The first Dominion ship to fire on the station vanished. Not exploded, not disabled. Gone. No debris, no energy reading, not even light where it used to be. Just absence. Like something had plucked it from reality and decided it wasn't worth remembering. On board Threnody, Ash watched the data streams glitch. 1 second, 209 ships. Next, 191, then 172. No fire returned. No counterattack, just deletion. "They're being unmade," whispered the Koru engineer. Her hands shaking, Ash leaned closer to the feed. The station below wasn't just housing a weapon. It wasn't a station anymore. It had unfolded. Beneath its metal skin, not steel, bone. Not grown. Carved, like someone had made a cathedral out of extinction. Inside it, Revenant stared as the hunger entity took form, not solid, not flesh, a shape of memory given volume. It looked like every soldier Earth had buried, all of them, wearing the grief they died with like armor. "They thought they built me to consume you," it said. "But they were wrong. I was born when you buried the first city and didn't cry. I'm not a weapon. I'm your answer." Revenant stepped forward, "Then help us finish it." The thing tilted its head. "Are you sure?" "Yes, even if what dies first is your mercy." Revenant didn't blink. "We ran out of mercy 12 glassings ago." The sky turned red. All across the Gravewake fleet, systems surged. Weapons unshackled. Firewalls dropped. New code flooded through every ship. not Dominion, not Grave Wake. Something. Bolder, Ash stared at the tactical map as Dominion fleets began to break formation, not because they were outgunned, because they were being hunted. For the first time in 1,000 years, they ran, but not fast enough. On the edge of the system, the Dominion command carrier. Vox Kalis tried to initiate light slip, its engines never activated. Its crew began screaming, before the ship even tore open. Not from fire, from remembrance. Their minds filled with human losses, cities they'd never seen, screams they never caused, and still they felt guilty. Their pain wasn't tactical. It was ancestral, as if Earth had decided to let them feel everything they thought was beneath them. Back aboard Threnody, Ash turned to the Koru medic. What did we become? She stared through the viewport. We stopped being prey. And she looked away. We started becoming the question every empire forgot to ask. Then the comms lit up, not human, not Dominion. A new voice, old, terrified, untranslated, except for one line. You let it remember. Now it will not forget. The stars burned cold, indifferent. The Gravewake fleet surged forward, a tidal wave of broken ships, scarred souls, and whispered legends. Revenant stood at the helm of Threnody, silent, eyes like storm clouds ready to break. Around him, the uneasy coalition watched, hearts thudding with dread and hope tangled like a poison and an antidote. The Dominion forces shattered before them, not with firepower, but with something older, something brutal, something unyielding. Fear, not theirs. The Dominion's. The monstrous echo born in the hunger core spread like a virus through every Dominion hull. The entity did not kill, it remembered. It made their enemies see their own ghosts, the pain buried beneath millennia of conquest, the screams they silenced by fire and steel. They were drowning in it. And Earth? Earth was rising. Revenant spoke once, quietly. This is not mercy. This is survival. His voice cut through the battle's cacophony, sharp enough to split stone. The coalition faltered. The Hollow whispered to each other. The Yavathi's scales gleamed with new purpose. The Koru clenched claws tighter. We carry the weight of every fallen. Every loss is our armor. Every scar, our blade. Then came the order, not from a commander. From the spirit of a broken world refusing to die. Push forward. Fleet after fleet advanced into the Dominion's retreat. Unyielding. The galaxy held its breath. The Dominion's voice broke across comms. Not arrogant, not mocking. You are a plague. A mistake. Surrender or be purged. Revenant answered. Everyone else saw weakness. Humanity saw a reason to fight harder. A silence fell over the void, heavier than any warship's blast. Because in those 7 words, the galaxy glimpsed something new, something terrifying, something unstoppable. The Dominion blinked first, then the stars, then the legends.